Welcome to our Bitcoin-only panel with the title Bitcoin Potential for an Asset as Scarce as Gold. And I think everyone here in this room who has been in the crypto industry for a while knows that our panelists today are huge Bitcoin fans, Bitcoin supporters. But instead of singing love songs and praises to Bitcoin altogether, I see my task to ask critical questions about whether Bitcoin is really the biggest financial revolution or evolution of the 21st century. And because this is such a huge topic, I would like to save some time and skip the introduction round. I think you know our panelists already very well. If not so, you see their names there. Google them, go on LinkedIn. And so let's jump right in with the title of this panel. And therefore, I would like to know, does it even make sense to compare Bitcoin with gold, or are we just doing this because we can't find anything else?
Well, I believe it does make sense. I think that gold is not even it is not the scarcest. So when you look at the way that the Bitcoin protocol is made, then you will be finding out that Bitcoin indeed is scarcer than gold. And the cool thing is that you cannot make any more Bitcoin if the price goes up. So what happens is, if the price for gold would be going up, then people would just start digging more for gold and they would be finding more gold. And that is something that on a technological way is not possible with Bitcoin. So you can hash more, but they won't get any more Bitcoin out. So coming back to your initial statement, I truly do believe that Bitcoin is not the best or not the best financial innovation of the 20th century. But actually, I do believe that Bitcoin is the best evolution since money even started.
Agree.
I would also agree that that you can actually compare Bitcoin to gold based on the concept, how it has been developed. And right now, I think it's not yet better than gold, but the potential is there that in the far future, it could potentially be better than gold because you can transport it point to point on the planet, for example. You cannot confiscate it. And there are sometimes some news out there. For example, in May this year, there was the news out that somewhere in Africa, a huge gold appearance has been found, and apparently 5% of the worldwide gold volume has been found somewhere in Africa. Do you trust such news or not? I don't trust such news, so to be honest. And with Bitcoin, this would not be possible. Yeah? Bitcoin, such news that somebody has found 5% of the total volume in Bitcoin is basically hardly possible. Therefore, I think Bitcoin has a huge potential in the future, but the key difference right now is the following. There is no consensus in the society what is Bitcoin. For example, my daughter is 8 years old. I brought her to school recently and I asked her, do you know gold? You know, 8-year-old girl. Yes, of course, Dad. Gold is metal and it's scarce and it has some value. That's what an 8-year-old girl tells me. And it's all around the world probably, because people and we all are getting socialized in a way that we understand what gold is roughly at a very early age, probably at 5+. And in case you ask the same question about Bitcoin, then you hear nothing or basically huge question mark. So there is, at this point of time, consensus in all societies around the world that gold is there with some value. And concerning Bitcoin, there is not at all any consensus. There are only some freaks and geeks out there who believe in this, but probably 90%, 95% of the population around the world is not believing this yet. So that's the huge difference. So therefore, in my personal opinion, the correct sentence would be the following: Bitcoin has the potential to be something like digital gold. That's basically the correct wording, in my opinion. Would anybody agree?
I think that's already an interesting point, whether the Bitcoin narrative is that it's actually digital gold or digital money, right? And this is already, we are in the discussion of whether Bitcoin is rather a store of value or rather a means of payment in the end. So I think when you're as deep in the topic as Sven, you of course start differentiating gold and Bitcoin, and there are of course very important differences. I actually like it as a first narrative, and I also like the narrative of saying Bitcoin is similar to gold because it's decentralized, it's scarce, but it has one more additional important attribute, that it's digital, right? So calling it digital gold is actually a nice way to start. And also when you look at the price of Bitcoin, and this is also why I like this comparison, is that actually with gold, a certain share of the gold price actually comes from a monetary premium. So we're not valuing gold at a price because it is used in the industry, but we're adding something on top of it, right? That doesn't come from its real world use, and that's the monetary premium. And with Bitcoin, interestingly, Bitcoin has until now been, actually the price has been 100% monetary premium. This might change going forward, maybe with ordinals and these kinds of things, but this is also why I like this comparison between gold and Bitcoin, because it helps. It usually helps to understand new things by starting with something you know, but of course we need to make clear that it's way more than gold in the end.
But don't we need further use cases? I mean, scarcity, of course, like gold, it's great, but is it enough, really?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You don't need any more functionality than there is right now. You have the scarcest asset in the world. That is, you need more technical layers in order to be able to use it even better. But I don't know how many people have ever made the experience of doing a Lightning transaction. I just paid a döner. This is a very tasty Turkish thing. You might know that. I just bought my döner in Plochingen with a Bitcoin Lightning.
Why, Sven? Why? I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't pay with gold or Tesla stocks. So why should I pay with something where I think about that it will increase in value? So it doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely.
It does make sense because it increases adoption. So the döner guy, he furthers adoptions because he obviously attracts tourists to Swabia, and I think it does make sense. I also have a small girl story. My daughter now is 20, but 2016 she was 13, and we just spent our fall vacation at the Lake of Como, and we had entered the apartment, and then for some reason, out of any context, she says, "Hey, Dad," she was 13. "Hey, Dad, why is there not more money being printed for poor and sick children?" So that's not about this panel, but it really shows, you said it creeps in the value of gold, small children, and I think it also creeps in the challenges of the fiat systems deep into society, and I think that's the quote what she said.
Exactly, and exactly therefore, I think a scarcity of Bitcoin is enough as an application and as a technology. The scarcity built into Bitcoin, which you cannot change, together with the possibility to not confiscate it, in my mind, makes it a killer application.
Absolutely, and I want to. Well, this panel is going. This will be going wild. So I think one very interesting point to add to that is that most of the people now in the financial industry who are calling the shots, so higher up the ranks, they lived through a time where the world usually got better and inflation wasn't that big of a deal. So the people that are in the system now, and the young people who are very like digitally focused and they basically live in their phones, they are very much more used to some digital numbers in their phone, and if it's Bitcoin behind it or if there's something else behind it, they really don't care. And when I'm spending Bitcoin, and I'm spending Bitcoin every week, I'm doing this fully for educational purposes and to show. I mean, how many people are in this room, and that's okay. If you find me after this speech, I will give every one of you a piece, not one, a piece of a Bitcoin. So go find me here. You get all Bitcoin for free.
I want.
Yeah, and so go find me so I can show you guys how easy it already is, and you can use it.
So, but Sven, let me help you a bit, since you asked actually a fair critical question about why actually paying with Bitcoin, and I wanted to pick that up again. And I don't want to nerd out too much on this monetary premium thing, but I just want to make that point again, that there has never been an asset which price consisted 100% of a monetary premium. So it's a new thing, and for an economist, it kind of freaks us out a bit, right? Because we are not really sure how to deal with it. And the monetary premium could theoretically also disappear. Very similarly, that the monetary premium of gold could disappear. Why don't we expect it to disappear? Because gold is around for a couple of thousand years and we have built so much trust into it. And Bitcoin is a super new technology, right? And I think it would help to actually have more kind of real world adoption and kind of real world advantages from using Bitcoin over existing kind of means of payment or whatnot. And I think that does not necessarily exist. It's more like us believers who kind of have more this long-term vision and think, yes, Bitcoin is maybe the better form of money and this is why we believe in it and this is why Sven is paying each week because he wants to foster adoption. But I think for a broader adoption, it would actually help to have these more immediate use cases. And they might exist, and I hand over back to you to tell me what they are, probably more in developing economies than in Germany, right?
Well, exactly. When we're talking about Bitcoin and what value does Bitcoin bring? So there's always the question of what value does Bitcoin bring, and when you're having that conversation in a European or in a US setup, the talks are completely different because a lot of people here in this room they don't have the immediate understanding of where it actually brings value. If you talk to somebody from the Ukraine, for example, there the value of something that you can transfer in your head, basically fleeing a country, that was a very immediate store of value. That was one of those things. And if you ask somebody from Venezuela, if you ask somebody from El Salvador, and if you ask all these developing countries, Bitcoin actually offers an exchange route from rough governments, actually, which is a beautiful thing.
I mean, all of the fiat money in the world is depreciating. Some a little bit and some faster. And if you count all the fiat money and you calculate the depreciation that they have, it's a gigantic value. And Bitcoin is limited, that's it.
Alex, I remember a keynote from you where you said that the only one who can stop Bitcoin are the central banks. Can you explain it?
Yeah, and if the fiat money was not depreciating, if they had a true stable, they define stable as 2% depreciation, which is cutting the value in half in 35 years. I don't agree it's stable. I don't say what I'm thinking, but it's not stable. So I think if it was stable, then the need for Bitcoin would go away. And I have another story. I was just at the book fair on a startup panel. And then to my right, there was an Islamic booth, and I was a bit scared. And then right in front of the panel, there was a Bundesbank booth, and I was really scared. So I went to the Bundesbank guys, and they were really nice. And I said, and I asked them, why do you still have gold? And they said, well, in case of crisis, if all the fiat system collapses, so they don't really believe in the fiat system 100%. Then we have the gold, and then we have something. And then I said, well, why do you have it scattered around the world? Half of the German gold is more or less abroad, mostly in the US. I said, yeah, well, if the Russians come and it's out of tradition and it's close to the financial trading system, we can quickly convert it into something else in case we need it to. And then I said, whoa. And then he also said, it's really interesting. All the gold in the world, it's a cube, and the cube is 21 meters, all the three directions. So that's an interesting link to Bitcoin, by the way. And then I asked him, why don't you buy Bitcoin? And he said, the only reason is so volatile. And that's interesting. Because if Bitcoin matures and the volatility, it will go down, of course, over time. If it reaches 500,000, the value of gold per Bitcoin, then maybe the volatility is more or less the same. And that's going to be, and he didn't have any, he didn't point out any other argument. So in a way, they see it that it's a legitimate store of value, potentially replacing gold if they get used to the volatility.
Yeah, but you can assume that this is not the public opinion of the Bundesbank, right? It was one employee saying something to a random guest.
But let me pick up the point of how might central banks affect Bitcoin, because I think there are two different ways, and I think it's an empirical fact that fiat money is depreciating. We have inflation everywhere, right? That's nothing we can or should debate. But I think there are two different effects on Bitcoin, and we need to distinguish the role of Bitcoin as a store of value and the role of Bitcoin as a means of payment. Because I think it has a very positive effect on the use of Bitcoin as a store of value, but the fact that fiat money is depreciating has a negative effect on the use of Bitcoin as a means of payment. Because if I imagine I have my wallet here, I have Bitcoin on it and I have the euro on it, and I know tomorrow this euro on my wallet will be worth a little bit less than today, and I want to buy my döner, I of course will give away the euro because I want to keep the Bitcoin because it's appreciating, right? So I think these are the two effects that central banks and central bank monetary policy has on Bitcoin.
Yeah, but these effects need to be very, very, very strong to really be at work. You could see this when the inflation rate increased to, say, 8%, or in the Baltic countries, 10% plus, 15% plus. Then people have gotten very much interested in scarce asset. That's gold, real estate, and also Bitcoin. Now inflation came down, and maybe this is also one reason that the interest in Bitcoin vanished a little bit. I would be very, very interested to examine what's going on in the UK, because inflation rate is not going down there. It's still at 8%. So I didn't do any research, but it would be very interesting to basically analyze this to see whether the interest in scarce asset stays higher in the UK. And then you mentioned it earlier, you have countries like Turkey, Venezuela, and other ones where the inflation rate is high and stays high, significantly high. That's where we see the highest interest in Bitcoin as a storage of value, right? And probably not just Bitcoin, but also potentially gold, in case people can purchase it, or real estate, in case people could purchase it, and so on. So I think I would agree, in case there is a very significant increase in the interest rate, then people are getting interest. But also in the society, if the interest rate is, in case the inflation is just 2%, 3%, 4%, it doesn't really move the needle for the interest in Bitcoin.
But in the end, it's a high correlation to the money supply, or can we just, like, is it possible to forecast the Bitcoin price if we say, okay, in the future there will be like quantitative easing again, we increase the money supply, what you told me would mean like higher Bitcoin price? Oh, so easy.
I mean, I really think the inflation is higher than the official inflation figures. It just measures CPI, and the CPI basket is adjusted all the time in a way that the inflation is lower. It neglects the effect on asset prices. I mean, I looked up the inflation index on Statista in February this year, and it showed for the months, I think, September, October, November of last year, 10 point something. And then for some odd reason, I looked up the inflation rate again in April, and it shows 8 point something for these months. Why? Because the basket was adjusted, and what a surprise if the CPI basket gets adjusted, then inflation figures are always lower. It never gets adjusted, the inflation rates are higher. And then there's the hedonic quality, inclusion, and all the stuff. And we all see it when we go shopping and spend our money. It's higher than what the statistics tell us. And I think that what the point I'm making, the inflation problem is bigger than we think.
Yeah, but people are, for whatever reason, not deeply interested in it. They just take it as a given. They are, well, people here in the room, you are caring, right? We are caring. But the other, say, 70 million people in Germany, they, for whatever reason, they don't examine this. They just take it as it is. So why is this?
I'm picking up again. Sven's
Until they don't take it anymore.
They don't answer your questions. Do you realize that? So I think it's an interesting question to see, like, how does quantitative easing and like expansionary monetary policy affect the Bitcoin price? And I think it's definitely positive. And the reason is interest rates are low. Empirically, Bitcoin is rather a risk-on asset, which means people believe that there's big upside potential. So when interest rates are low, people are looking for yield. This is why they move into Bitcoin, and this is why we usually see higher Bitcoin prices when interest rates are low.
Usually, Alex and I are very much aligned. Now's the time where we are
ready,
where we are not. So. When we're looking at Bitcoin and the narrative around Bitcoin, you could see some massive changes going on in the market, and what you said is correct. So in the past, Bitcoin was felt like a risk-on asset, and I quote, I never thought I would quote Larry Fink in a positive way, but Larry just said that there is a flight to quality. That was a quote, a flight to quality, when he was referring to the spike in the Bitcoin price that was caused by the news, which were fake news, that the ETP was granted or was approved. And when you're looking at traditional financial institutions, let's say you're an asset manager in Frankfurt and you're thinking about ETPs that you might launch, and you think back like 2 or 3 years and maybe was in your shoes and you approach your CEO and say, hey, I want to do a Bitcoin ETP, they would have literally looked at you, and I was in that position too, they would be looking at you as you were insane in the main brain. And then, now with Börse Stuttgart side, I have talks with traditional finance guys, like CEOs in their 50, 55, 60 years old, and one of them told me not having and he explicitly said Bitcoin, not having a Bitcoin product offering is not feasible anymore.
I need to intervene, sorry. Because I know your opinion about that, but I would like to know your opinion. So I want to have like a sentiment from the audience. So who of you thinks that Bitcoin is a hedge against inflation? If you agree, please raise your hands. That's the majority, yeah? Isn't it?
Roughly half.
Roughly? Okay, so...
Yeah, but some people would say no, and some people would abstain from the vote. Given this, the opinion is rather clear.
And some are asleep.
Okay, let's jump into politics and regulations. Sven, as I know you, you are very passionate when it comes to a fair Bitcoin regulation, let's say. And are you, despite Mika, still afraid that the EU or some people in the EU will try to crack down on Bitcoin still?
Yes. And I can tell you how, and I can tell you why I believe it is wrong. So what the MiCA has done, which is great, is that is a unified framework for crypto assets, and they try to ban proof of work mining, which is the consensus mechanism that Bitcoin uses, as everybody in this room knows, and it was gotten rid of the MiCA in the last minute. Thank you for the support, by the way. So what they will be now doing is they are introducing regulatory technical standards, and these regulatory technical standards, they are consulted right now. And in those regulatory technical standards, they will be trying to actually implement reporting issues that might at the end make it impossible to report it in the right way. And if you are a regulated financial institution and you are not able to report the data that the regulator is asking you for, then you can't actually deal in these things. So I think at the end it will not be coming that way. So I do believe that the industry, and I'm looking very much to the big players here, that they will be being vocal enough to actually talk this out of the regulation. But there will be tries, and that is something that is for sure. By the way, the normal currency that you guys are using, like the euro coins and all that kind of stuff, do you know what that consists of? Mostly, it's copper. And copper is one of the worst and nightmarishest energy consumptive materials that you can use for something. And nobody gives a damn about it. And nobody is asking, okay, well, you're using proof of work consensus algorithms for Bitcoin. Somebody like maybe Greenpeace, founded by Ripple, could try to change the copper percentage in the Eurocoin campaign.
Alex, quick question. Is DWS planning an ETF, Bitcoin ETF?
So thanks for playing the ball over. Happy to take that off.
Okay, we are already there, like, then go ahead.
I didn't pay him for that. So it's not possible in Europe to issue a Bitcoin ETF because in Europe you can't have ETFs for single currency products or single products. That's not possible. So what we have to do in Europe.
Gold ETF.
No, it's not. It's not an ETF. It's called an ETC, exchange traded commodity, right? And so this is exactly what we are doing. So we are not able to do an ETF, so we're doing an ETC. It's a bit of a different structure, but in the end, it's the same. It's the same in the sense that you will have an ISIN, and you will have the possibility as an institutional investor or a retail investor to go to your broker, to your usual account, and invest into Bitcoin. And we are probably doing this end of this year, early next year for Bitcoin and Ether.
Applause.
Alexander, I would like to know, we talked about ESG a little bit, about this topic. Was it a big topic for you at DWS as well? Like, did you have to convince a lot of people that they believe that Bitcoin has a green image?
Yeah, and I have to give that point to Sven that in 2 years, 2 years ago, this wouldn't have been possible at all. Now it's possible, but of course we had very tough discussions and we're still having them around ESG because, for instance, what we have said as DWS is that we want to be carbon neutral by 2050, together with many, many other asset managers. We have basically signed that agreement. And I mean, you can now debate long about whether the energy consumption is good or bad of Bitcoin, but it consumes energy, right? We can't discuss that away, and we have to deal with it somehow. And if we say, yes, we take Bitcoin into our portfolio, which we are going to do, we have to maybe finance one additional wind park in the end to kind of level that out because we want to be carbon neutral in the end. And we can now debate long about to what extent what of these things make sense, but I can tell you most of the asset management and the financial industry has similar goals, which means it's just a fact that it's difficult for them to take on Bitcoin because it's a fact that Bitcoin consumes energy. But we are fighting these fights and it's doable, as you can see.
I gotta have to say something about this specific issue because that is something that is that's one of my hard issues. So the normal way people looking at Bitcoin and the Bitcoin energy transformation, I would never say consumption, so the Bitcoin energy transformation is looked in a way that you say, okay, it transforms energy into heat and this is a bad thing. In fact, when you're looking at the way how renewable energy is produced, you will be finding that energy production from renewables is very fluctuating. So there are times where you've got a lot of energy produced by renewable resources, and these energy consumption, these energy production, which is already ongoing right now, is actually going to waste. So 2% of the energy production from renewables already is going to waste. If we want to be even more greener, and we want to be more like solar and wind powered greener, we need to increase the amount of electricity that is produced by renewables, meaning that the overproduction in the good scenario gets even higher. So how do you capture that? And the most clever idea would be to actually capture that with mobile, Bitcoin, or some other proof of work, but for me it's Bitcoin mining units that can harvest that energy and actually earn this person operating that wind park a premium owned in Bitcoin.
Yeah, and right now, that's exactly what we discussed earlier. Society and politics doesn't understand this yet, because right now, the windmills, they are simply switched off. Mm-hmm. Even though they could produce energy, they are switched off. And
the government pays 1 billion or 800 million euros a year to compensate for that.
Well, yeah, that's the taxpayer who pays that. Yeah, so you
and you.
You and I.
Aside from the ESG discussion, I would like to know what needs to happen that big investors and institutional investors invest directly into Bitcoin. I mean, we talk a lot about Bitcoin ETFs in the US or Bitcoin ETPs, but why not directly? What are the hurdles?
Well,
I think it's happening already. So talking to Volksbank Bayern Mitte, they say they have companies, rich people who directly buy Bitcoin. That's the way they offer Bitcoin, just buying directly. And I really think if the first ETFs in the US and then the ETP at DWS is going to be established in the market, then Bitcoin as an asset class will be established, and then many more players will come.
Can I add a thought here? it's just an hypothesis and it might be wrong, but with MiCA, it might be possible that Europe is moving towards people and specifically retail investors investing directly in Bitcoin. That's what Börse Stuttgart is offering and others. But in the US, where FTX has been destroyed and other exchanges are really under scrutiny, we saw this, it feels like the US is moving quite strongly towards Bitcoin ETFs, if at all. So you could make the summary here. Europe is moving towards, from the retail perspective, right? Europe is moving towards direct investments, if people wish, plus ETCs or ETFs, and the US is moving towards primarily ETFs. Does this make sense? This kind of distinction between the US and Europe?
I wouldn't necessarily agree. To be honest, when we are seeing institutional adoption, we see institutional adoption foremost on the ETPs that is already there, because they don't have to change anything in their systems. So when you're talking retail consumers, yes, you're right, and I do believe this also has something to do with the German ecosystem. So the second largest number of Bitcoin full nodes is actually run by Germans, which is unbelievable when you look at the whole landscape. We have a very strong Bitcoin community here in Germany, but I wouldn't go as far as you said right now.
Who runs a full node? Full node at home?
Oh, nice. My 10-second answer to your question, Sven. I think we need the big current financial institutions to offer that infrastructure. We of course have Börse Stuttgart with Bison. All the big banks are working on crypto custody solutions at the moment. So this is coming, and as soon as this is here and I can very easily through my bank get access directly to cryptocurrencies, the entry hurdle is way lower than today.
Yeah. And in the crypto winter, I mean, I was living through this conference for the last 2 days, and we're all in crypto winter. The trade.
No, we're not.
Oh, excuse me. Crypto spring already, but it's still, you know, the expectations are still low, and you know the mood isn't right, and the trading volumes are low. But there is one key difference, and I've lived in this space for a long enough time. You can tell by my haircut that it is that way. So the fundamental difference is that all of the big banks, and I can't, of course, tell you which ones are working with us or will soon be working with us. They have not stopped any of their projects. They will be going live. They will be going live next year or the year after. Once you have this big tanker moving, it doesn't stop. Until it moves, it takes forever. But when it moves, it doesn't stop. And they don't stop. They will be going live next year, and it's going to be a lot of fun in the next year.
Now we are running out of time, but still I would like to have a last final round, because I think it's super important. You're in the space for a very long time, so I think it's very important to have your opinion about the future. So please, everyone, you can start. Sven, you already talked a lot about your vision, how you see the future of Bitcoin. So please, your final words.
We were seeing the ETF in the US getting approved. Next year, you will be seeing large German, like very large German banks getting live with their Bitcoin trading capabilities for retail and also institutional investors next year. We will be seeing a very large crypto exchange probably exploding, and this will coincidentally happen directly before the ETF gets approved. But this is just conspiracy theories.
I think Bitcoin will be swinging upwards forever. It will never stop. And the swings will get smaller, so volatility will get smaller. And I think our responsibility as Bitcoiners is to use the knowledge, the networks, and maybe the wealth that's being generated to help to create a better world. Because if the fiat system collapsed quickly, which we don't want, it could be very bad. It could be riots on the streets, which we see in other countries today. So I think we need to contribute constructively to a better society and to a sounder fairer monetary systems, fairer for all parts of society. And I think the opportunity will be there because with the upward swings for Bitcoin.
Adding one point about inflation rates and interest rates, again, I think this will be very crucial to motivate people to get interest in Bitcoin. And so far, very often, the US and the European interest rates and inflation rates moved quite parallel. Let's see how this will play out in the future. It could be that the US dollar stays the flight to safety, kind of, even though they have huge debt compiled, but it might be that the euro deviates from this development. We see it already, for example, with UK leaving the EU, that the metrics over there are changing. As I have said, inflation rate is still above 8%. So therefore, I think what happens to inflation and also interest rates will both of them will motivate very strongly how people will find interest in Bitcoin, and then subsequently, potentially, the price might be affected.
Yeah. So the number is already blinking red. I'll be really quick, and let me maybe limit it then to us at DWS, because what I would wish and I would hope for, there are currently people, including our CEO, making some really bold moves and taking some bets that are not supported by everyone in this industry, right? And I would actually hope for us and for our management board that they will be rewarded in the future, and that in 2030 the products we are building today around cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, of course, work well, that we actually earn money with it, and that they're kind of happy about the decision that they have taken today.
Thanks a lot. It was a lot of fun, valuable insights. Thanks a lot, and big applause for our panel, please.